This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Jackson Flickinger and Corey Walsh, and it's been a minute since we got together to record a pod, but Cavs basketball, it's right around the corner. That Green Goblin mask has been calling to all of us once again, and so we had to come back to drop some takes about the offseason. Today, we're going to talk about some of the changes that the Cavs made this summer, and then we're going to talk about the injuries that are going on to the starting lineup and just what next season means for the team generally. But before we do that, I want to start off here by checking in with the guys. Jackson, Corey, how was your summer vacation? How have you been doing?
It's been great. I've missed hanging out with you. You know, you and Corey. Yeah. Just miss sharing these takes. You know, miss calling both of you idiots. You know, things of that nature.
I'll let the listeners know that Jackson has done that many times in text. So,
yeah,
not many times.
He makes sure to hit his quota throughout the summer. I
would never.
You sent so Fear the Sword's about to start up our player previews, and I think you sent that yesterday, right? Or am I misremembering? Well, I went in today to sign up for a few, and everything's gone, including the Luke Travers preview. Mike jumped on that one right away, so I was like, "Dang, there's like nothing left for me." But I signed up for a few.
We'll take that offline.
Dean Wade, Tyrese Proctor, and I think Evan Mobley. So everything was gone. So we're all ready for Cavs basketball is the point. Everyone's just itching to get to it. But I had a good summer vacation. As you guys may have noticed already, I did get scratched playing basketball yesterday. So I'll address that in case anyone's wondering. Jackson did not beat me up. I was playing pickup basketball.
Didn't get the invite though. So that's rude.
It was a spur of the moment hoop session. All right, it ended up resulting in an injury.
Battle
Good.
We'll
that's
take
karma.
this offline as well.
That's karma. That's what you get.
It could have been.
You deserve that. Yeah, it was karma. We already established that.
All right. Well, since the camaraderie is clearly we haven't missed a beat here. Let's go ahead and get into recapping the Cavs offseason. And so just to kind of refresh everybody, I wrote down a list of who they have added and subtracted this summer. Now, if I missed anything, you can correct me. But from what I have, the Cavs this summer added Lonzo Ball, Larry Nance Jr., and Tyrese Proctor. They have lost Ty Jerome, Isaac Okoro, and Javonte Green. Now, they still have 2 open roster spots, I believe, and they'll probably fill at least one of those before the season starts. I believe they also have a 2-way spot open as well. Tristan Thompson, I'm not sure if he's working another crypto rug pull or if he plans on playing basketball. I don't know what he's got going on. But, Jackson, I'll start with you. We can just put it
Forgot Emoni Bates.
Well, that's that's still kind of up in the air. I'm assuming he's not coming back. He probably would.
I don't think it's up in the air.
It's pretty down in the air.
He hasn't signed anywhere yet, is all I'm saying. He has not signed anywhere, and training camp invitations have not gone out yet. At least we haven't had him reported. So you can add Emoni Bates to the subtracted list if you want. But Jackson, that's the list there. So just overall view, are you happy with the moves that Kobe Altman made this summer?
I think that they need more scoring off the dribble. And I think that losing Ty Jerome, I know that he had a bad series against Indiana. I'm not sure why he's the only one who gets the finger pointed at him most when, he was forced into a role that he shouldn't have been in to begin with. And he was far from the only one who struggled. I guess the only person who shouldn't have a finger pointed at them is probably Max Strus, who I think probably the only player to play above what you would expect in that situation.
Jackson,
Anybody else I'm missing?
He went 0-6 in the final game or something.
Oh, well, that game didn't
played
matter.
Out of his mind the other games.
Right.
I would give Donovan Mitchell a heavy pass. I don't think he was perfect in that series by any means. And that's besides the point, but he balled out.
Right. So it's just, there's a lot, but you can do a lot of finger pointing at Donovan Mitchell. I don't think you can, so why looking at Ty Jerome as the problem, I think was a miscalculation. I understand that they're in a very tight position with the luxury tax and the second apron. that affected the decision. But I think that adding Lonzo Ball is something that they drastically needed. They needed somebody who could move the ball, kind of have versatility to play multiple positions on even the wing and guards. Also, a good ball handler, somebody who you definitely want in a playoff series, even though he's played 0 playoff games in his career, absolutely 0. He has as many playoff minutes as me, Corey, and Tony. So his game though should translate to playoff basketball well. But I do think that there is going to be a hole in that whole, getting your own shot department. And I think that's something that will really show through if one of Darius or Donovan misses time. We know Darius is missing the start of the season. So I think that that's going to be an issue early on. We'll see how they can counteract that. But overall, I think Nance is a great addition. I really like picking up Nance for a minimum. I think that you need somebody who can kind of play the 4 and 5, because what's the point of picking up somebody who can't play with both Mobley and Allen? And I think Nance does that. So you're getting a lot there with Nance. I know he's not the player that he was when he left, but he also has added a 3-point shot, which I think is something that could come in useful in Kenny Atkinson's offense. So I think those are 2 good pickups. I just wish they came without the subtraction of Ty Jerome, because I think they're plugging 2 holes that they needed to, but now I think there's a potentially another hole that could show through.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of just felt like the Cavs offseason was more defined. Like I feel like the goal was to try to get more lineup fluidity. I feel like this was a team that had very rigid positional players, which didn't allow for much creativity. I guess you could argue the most creative thing they did was play Dean Wade at the 3, but even JB Bickerstaff was doing that the season prior. So not the most creative idea in the world, but overall, the Cavs really have put themselves in a tricky situation, though, because like Jackson just said, while they have increased the fluidity of their lineups, they have really kind of taken a heavy swing on talent at the sacrifice of a team that was already prone to injuries, with 2 players who are not known for being the healthiest role players on the planet in Larry Nance Jr. and Lonzo Ball. But like with the whole Ty Jerome thing, like it's going to be for what Lonzo Ball adds. I get the math in a way, but like Jackson said, and especially with now these compounding injuries, which Kobe Altman really only probably knew about Darius Garland's at the time, but Max Strus's, which we'll talk about later, also now adds to, is the offensive firepower on this team is really going to be stuck with the starters in a way that, like, if Lonzo Ball misses games or Larry Nance Jr. misses games, I really don't have a ton of faith in this bench with like providing points, which is really one of the best things they did last year. And what Ty Jerome really excelled at was kind of picking up the dead weight offensively for the Cavs off the bench. And with that now gone, you're kind of hoping that Lonzo Ball, who while having been improved as an offensive player, is never really reached the heights of what Ty Jerome did last season, even if Ty Jerome was on a historic pace, which will probably be unmatched in Memphis and would probably have been unmatched this year. But at least we knew what it looked like. And we don't know what Lonzo Ball and a Kenny Atkinson offense, or in a season in which he plays most of the games, can look like. So it was a big swing, and they took the swings that they could have. But I guess we'll see. And the injuries already are kind of plaguing this team.
Yeah, I would say I'm overall pretty satisfied with this summer. And that does pain me to say, because as no one has mentioned yet, I was one of the last survivors of Okoro Island. But don't worry, we bought a new plot of land somewhere else. We're going to try and rebuild that thing from the ground up again. But that we won't get sidetracked there. I want to mention Ty Jerome, because that's obviously the big thing that they lost this year. And I'll die on this hill. I'll just be straightforward. I think I would rather just have Ty Jerome than Lonzo Ball. I think Ty Jerome, we take for granted how many games they won last season because of Ty Jerome coming off the bench and being that offensive firepower. Now, I still think Lonzo Ball can fit and help this team in a lot of different ways. You could even make the argument that he will help them more in the playoffs than Ty Jerome could have. But still, overall, I think Ty Jerome was a difference maker for the bench. And as both of you mentioned, I worry about their firepower without him on offense. Overall, like I said, though, Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance could be more conducive to that playoff run. At the end of the day, we can focus on the bench and the role players, but really like 90% of everything with this team comes down to Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley in the playoffs. You can throw Garland and Allen in there too, but like most of what they're going to do is going to come down to how far Mitchell and Mobley can take them. But it is a team sport, so you do need other people to step up. And so you could, like I said, you could argue that Nance and Ball fit better in a playoff setting next to Mitchell and Mobley because Lonzo gives you that point of attack defense and another playmaker in the backcourt. He's kind of like, he doesn't do everything Karis LeVert does, but he's kind of Karis LeVert if he didn't have any intrusive thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to shoot the ball that much. He's just going to take care of the ball and play defense and be another ball handler. And then Larry Nance Jr., like we said, he can play the 4 and space the floor a little bit, and that allows Mobley to play the 5 comfortably in a way that we really haven't seen with this Cavs team. Like, we've had Dean Wade at the 4, DeAndre Hunter at the 4, Larry Nance Jr. at the 4, lets Mobley go to the 5 in a legit 2-big lineup that I think actually works. And as Corey mentioned, there's injury concerns for them both, right? Like, who knows if Lonzo or Nance even play when it matters, but if they are healthy, then I think they can help a lot. And so overall, I'm satisfied, but as I think we all agree, Kobe Altman, he maybe should have looked into starting like a tree planting company and handing Ty Jerome some money under the table to keep him around, because clearly it's possible. They could have done something, but I'm obviously joking. If anyone hasn't seen the Kawhi Leonard news, somehow look that up. My reference will make sense. But yeah, overall, I'm satisfied with this offseason.
I really like that you brought up the point about Hunter not having to play the 4 anymore. That's what Nance really does. He's kind of, if it was up, like, I think the best version of Dean Wade is probably a better player than Larry Nance Jr., just because I do think that we still undervalue just how good of a defender and rebounder Wade is. It's just when he's not shooting, he's not playable. And you just hope that one day he says, I trust my 40% 3-point shot to actually, make,
this take
to actually take them.
This take has been dropped on 4 straight off-season pods by all of us.
This is it, though. It's different.
This is the year.
Right. Contract year,
but
though.
It's true. It's still true.
Yeah, but Nance gives you, like, it was very apparent in that Indiana series that, like, Dean Wade has no interest in taking these shots. And if he has no interest in taking these shots, he's not playable. And putting DeAndre Hunter at the 4 always sounds like a great idea. It worked against Boston in that one game that they came back in the regular season, like in February. But it's not something that you can do against every single team, especially because he is such a bad rebounder. Larry Nance Jr. allows you to not have to do that. And also, I know that there's some things floating. Chris Fedor mentioned that he doesn't think that Hunter is going to start even with Strus out. But adding Nance allows you to put him into the starting lineup in a way that you couldn't really the same last year, just because it's hard to start at the 3 and then also be the backup 4. Now he could start because you have a backup 4 in Nance/Dean Wade. So I think that is a really big part of this addition.
I feel like the goal for the Cavs, I think, is no longer like regular season success, which only makes these moves to me a little more concerning, because for making moves for a postseason success and adding like versatility in that front, you added 2 players who might not even be able to suit up for the postseason. And yes, you could say, for all the people who finger pointed at Ty Jerome at least was there. He was playing the games. We don't know if Lonzo Ball could have one of his best regular seasons of all time. He could also sprain his ankle in game 80 and then miss the entire duration of like the first round or second round. And the Cavs are already going to be basically kind of running at 60% at like for the first quarter of the season with the Garland and Max Strus injuries. So now we're just going to give more minutes to guys who are already injury prone that probably need their minutes managed. And instead, all the chips are being pushed on them, and then expecting players like Dean Wade to finally realize he could shoot, and Craig Porter to probably have more put onto his plate than he probably should have. So now you're kind of putting your chips in area. Like, I feel like they're really just setting themselves up for a disappointing first month and possibly a disappointing postseason, just because of the moves they made to try to increase their ceiling, but it also has really lowered their floor.
I would push back a little bit on the playoffs thing. I think that Lonzo Ball and Nance were both got just for the playoffs, because I think that even though, as I mentioned, Lonzo has not played a playoff game, he has that versatility and that ability to do a lot of different things that help in a lot of different ways. And like, Ty Jerome, if he's not scoring, he's not really a helpful player. He's not somebody who's a good passer, not a good defender by any means. So I do get it from that perspective, even if I don't, even if I would agree with Tony that I would probably just rather have Ty Jerome instead of Lonzo Ball. But I do think that they think that they're better suited for the playoffs. I think that's what they think. And I think that where you're going to miss Ty Jerome most is like a December game against the Raptors on the second out of a back-to-back. And it's like Donovan doesn't have it. Darius is sitting out and no one can put the ball in the basket. And that's where it's like, man, it'd be nice if you had Ty Jerome to really just, give you 15 to 20 points, by just doing stupid stuff. Because you're not going to have that because, Craig Porter Jr. is not going to do that. That's not the type of player. Lonzo Ball's not that type of player. Team Wade doesn't shoot 15 times in a month. So, like, I think that's where it's going to hurt them most, as opposed to, like, the playoffs. It theoretically should help them. But, Corey, you are correct that counting on Nance and Ball in the playoffs is just a risky proposition with their injury history.
It's also one of those things, too, where it's like a team like the Celtics would make those moves and no one would really flinch at it because we've seen proven results from the Celtics that their core players constantly have shown up for the postseason. The Cavs are coming into the third postseason in a row where we haven't seen all four players healthy and playing at a certain level. And now we're going to start to see, like, the players that we're supposed to be counting on for the postseason, like you said, are now having to be counted on for the regular season and getting more mileage on them than they probably should, which is just going to open that team up to possibly having injuries in the postseason, which is what they were intending. I think it's a high ceiling, low floor situation. I get in the hypothetical world where everything kind of goes smoothly for the Cavs, they are a much better team and more balanced, in my opinion, and the moves will make sense. I just struggle to see a world in which that actually happens, especially given how the Cavs' health history has been. And if we enter every preseason podcast being like, all right, so if the core four is healthy, this should work.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what both of you guys are saying there. And I want to be clear with my Alonzo take. The reason why I would rather just have Ty Jerome is because of that injury risk to Lonzo. And I know Ty Jerome hasn't been the healthiest dude across his career, but it's impossible to know who's going to be healthy. All I know is that most recently Lonzo's had way more injury concerns. And so I think Ty Jerome as an on-ball creator helps the Cavs in a different way that Lonzo Ball will help the Cavs, where he's more of a defensive player. He's a playmaker. He's a rebounder. There's a lot of ways in which Lonzo Ball can help this Cavs team a lot. I think undoubtedly, and we can kind of transition to this in a second, but I think the Cavs are going to be a worse team in the regular season this year. And I think that probably would have been true even if they had run back the exact same team as last year, just because 64 wins takes a lot of magic to get there. And I think they had every single thing go right for them throughout the regular season. And that just wasn't likely to happen twice. So I don't think that they're going to start 15-0. I don't think they're going to win 64 games again, but I think they're going to be a really good regular season team. And the last thing that I want to say about Lonzo and Larry Nance, then we can talk about our expectations for the regular season. One area in which I think it's almost underrated bringing in Lonzo especially, but even Nance, is that I think both of them are pretty high IQ basketball players who understand their role. And Lonzo in particular has never really been the guy who's going to say, hey, it's Lonzo Ball time, right? Like Karis LeVert would try to take over games. Ty Jerome against Indiana tried to take over games. Lonzo Ball is going to play his role, and he's going to do everything he can to help the team within his capabilities, right? And I mean, if you just think of that game 2 collapse, there's a lot that went wrong, and I'm not pinning it entirely on Ty Jerome. But if you just replace Lonzo Ball for Ty Jerome in that situation, he's probably inbounding the ball at the end of the game, which helps a lot. I think he's a good inbounder. He's got size, length, great passer. He's also not going to let Tyrese Halliburton shoot a 3 there. I'm pretty sure Lonzo's going to run him off the line, right? So there's these little intangible things, Again, he's not an experienced playoff player, but we trust that IQ is going to translate to the playoffs with Lonzo Ball. I just feel like there's a lot of mental errors that the Cavs have suffered from, both from LeVert and Jerome in recent years, and it's more than just those two.
And J.R. Smith.
And J.R. Smith. I'm not picking on anyone in particular. Those are just the first two names that come to mind. There's you could go down a long list of names.
Larry Hughes.
The point is, Lonzo
and
Colin Sexton both should help in that regard.
Well, not playoff errors, Corey.
Basketball players. Anyways, unless anyone has anything else to say, we can start looking ahead and talk about just a few things regarding the regular season, because we're going to save the in-depth previews for later on in September. But right now, the Eastern Conference, it's as wide open as it's ever been, right? Boston, basically off the market. Indiana, basically off the market with the injury to Hallie and Miles Turner gone. Milwaukee doesn't really have the supporting cast around Giannis. Like, Giannis is scary, but it's just one guy.
Playing a lot of Kevin Porter Jr.
Oh, yeah. A lot of Kevin Porter Jr., which is never a good sign. Philly, I think, probably missed its window with Embiid. Maybe he'll make a miraculous comeback. But basically, it's the Cavs and the Knicks, and maybe Orlando could get there. I'm not 100% sure they're there yet. But the point is, there's going to be a power struggle. Atlanta's another team that might not be fully there.
I'd put Detroit above Atlanta.
The point is, there's no team that is like head and shoulders above everybody else. There's going to be a little bit of a power struggle. And I would say the Cavs and Knicks are the two teams entering the season near the top of that. But it's going to be a weird year in the East where there's no clear favorite. There's no clear top dog. And so, Corey, where do you see the Cavs standing in the East entering this year?
I think the first quarter of the season's really going to kind of just be a throwaway. I think the Cavs are kind of limping into the start of the season, and I don't necessarily know how much we're going to learn about this team for the first half of the season, because even when the players come back, like Garland and Strus, they're probably not going to look like themselves. Those players usually take time to ramp up and get back into regular season form. They will benefit that the East is a lot weaker, but I think it's still going to be a case where the Cavs will probably not be the 1 seed. I don't think they might be the 2 seed. I think a 3-4 seed is very realistic for them, just because they're going to probably go 500 or a little above 500, I think, in the first few weeks. They're just going to be really shallow on the bench, and I think the bench minutes are really going to kill them. Yes, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen is better than a decent amount of teams in the league for like a core 3, but Garland does a lot for this team. And we've seen it's also just going to put a lot on Donovan Mitchell. And do we really think Donovan Mitchell or the Cavs want to expend themselves for a 1 to 2 month stretch to start the season? I don't think so. And that's where I kind of think that the second half of the season is where the Cavs will turn it on. And then we kind of get a better idea of what this team is. I would disagree with Corey on this one. I think that even though the Cavs are injured, if there's one thing I trust the Cavs to do, it's to play really good regular season basketball. And I think that even though you don't have Garland for the start, which is really important, even though you don't have Strus, you still have a lot of capable guys. You know, we're talking about the Cavs bench and that being a little bit of a concern. I think that it is kind of a concern, but also they have a lot of really capable guys that they can plug in. And you're also getting 48 great minutes of center play. And in the regular season, that is so useful to have Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley both out there. Then you have just one of Jarrett, just Evan. Like those anchor lineups in a way that I think is a lot of the reason why the Cavs have such regular season success. And I think that they should still be able to be a good team, even if they don't have Garland for an extended stretch, even if they don't have Strus. My concerns are all in the playoffs until they show that they can, even hang with a team that they're supposed to, beat, but it's not an overwhelmingly one way like it should have been with Orlando or like it was with Miami. I'm going to have a hard time buying them. And I don't know if there's anything in the regular season that would make me change my mind, but I do think that the Cavs are set up to be a good regular season team. They're not going to win 64 games, but if they won 57 games, that's probably enough to get a 1 seed. Mm-hmm. If not a 1 seed, at least a 2 seed. I think that that's probably where they're going to net out around there. Even with the injuries, like this team has such depth, and Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland, having 4 guys that are that good in the regular season just gives you so much more margin for error than, let's say, a team like Milwaukee, for example, where you're overly reliant on one player. So I like them in the regular season. The postseason,
they're just going to have to prove it that they can really do something there before, I believe.
Yeah, and I want to clarify what I said leading into this topic. There's no top dog in the East in terms of who's going to win the conference in the playoffs, but as far as the regular season goes, I do lean more towards what Jackson said. I do think the Cavs should be the top dog in the regular season for the Eastern Conference. Obviously, they can't stamp themselves in any way until the playoffs. We've been through this. We saw it last year. Anything that the Cavs could have possibly proved in the regular season, they did it all last year, and we saw them go out in 5 games in the second round. So we understand how this works, right? So ideally, there should be no question who the best. I know they're going to start the season with some adversity with the injuries, but when we get to the end of April, there should be no question who the best team was in the regular season in the Eastern Conference. It should be the Cavs, right? As far as the first 82 games go, I expect the Cavs to be the 1 seed again this year, at worst the 2 seed. That's barring, more injuries that pile on. But just entering this year, that's what I would expect because, and I've said this before, and I'll probably say it throughout the year, and I agree with what Jackson said. We're on the same page that the playoffs are what matters the most. But everyone who says the regular season doesn't matter, you can say that all you want. But if the Cavs are like the 5th seed or the 4th seed, we're going to be pissed off. We're going to say, what just happened? And you'd be right to say that. This team should be great in the regular season. And again, it's not a bad indicator to be good in the regular season. That usually does translate to the playoffs. It's not a 1-to-1 correlation, but every team that's ever won the championship was pretty dang good in the regular season. So it's not like people act like they contradict each other. All that to say is that the Cavs this year, in my opinion, barring more injuries that pop up, should finish as the top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. From there, they have to prove a lot of stuff in the playoffs. But in the regular season, they should be pretty dang good, in my opinion.
My question to you two would be, if the Cavs do well in the regular season, like let's say they do finish as the 1 seed, it doesn't change either of your opinions though of how they'll succeed in the postseason. No. And that's
I think the only sorry, you go ahead.
No, it's just that because we've seen this team at its quote unquote peak of regular season play, and we kind of thought that would prove I don't think any of us thought that they would get bounced in round 2. I think if we said going into the postseason that they played the Indiana Pacers, we weren't thinking that the series would unfold the way it did. And I'm not trying to discredit regular season play, but I feel like I'm at the point now, even if the Cavs finish at the 1, they go all out, it's not really moving much for me. And I almost would feel better if they were the 3rd seed, because to me that means that they have the playoffs in the back of their mind, because I don't need them to prove anything necessarily in the regular season other than they have figured out back end stuff more than the front. Nothing else to me really will matter unless I see small differences in the details of their lineups offering more resistances to what they might face.
So I think the one thing that would really change my opinion about this team is if we saw Evan Mobley have significantly more usage. He's unlocked as an offensive player and specifically a play creator where they are running things through him, not running a couple plays through him with some of these hybrid bench units, but actually playing through him on offense for extended stretches. I think seeing that would make me more optimistic about the playoffs otherwise, but I don't anticipate anything else making me feel like the playoffs, that they're better suited for the playoffs, because as Tony said, it couldn't have gotten any better than last year. But
into the first round, they couldn't have been better. There was nothing else they could have shown.
I do think one thing that I think is really interesting, and this is something that Chris Manning brought up sometime when I talked to him, so it's not an original take by me, but I think it's interesting that almost things went too right for the Cavs last year, where they never really had the counterpunch. The offense that they installed for day 1 just took off being the best offense in the NBA. They were the best offense from day 1 to game 82. There was no we need to figure something out. There was no adjustment period. It was just our best punch works, so we're just going to keep throwing it. And the adjustments that they made would be in individual games, maybe this lineup, maybe this matchup requires us to go small. Maybe we should play Ty Jerome, Garland, and Mitchell to close out a game because we need more firepower. Like, there was little adjustments, but no, like, all right, this thing that we're doing just simply isn't working. And I think that we kind of got to the playoffs, and when option A wasn't working on either end of the floor, there was no option B because they never had to really discover one throughout the regular season. So maybe if we could see signs in the regular season that like they have real counter punches, I think that maybe might make me feel a little better, but I think that's something that's worth bringing up when we talk about this team in the regular season.
Do you think the injuries to Garland and Strus will allow lineup versatility to kind of put the coaching staff in certain positions that could then be used in theory in the postseason? Or like, because I feel like it could be a learning experience for the staff. I feel like another thing that went really well for the team last year was their health was pretty near the top of the league in terms of like their starting players, their bench players mostly being healthy. There wasn't really much configuration outside of like a rest game or like a few games or so. This, I feel like kind of, I don't want to say it's like a test of the scheme, but I feel like there will have to be some adaptability because I don't think with the personnel we have, we can just trot out the same offense we did last season.
That's exactly what I was about to bring up too, just because Jackson was hitting on this and then Corey just laid it out perfectly. So I just want to jump into transition here because as Jackson said, and as Corey was just mentioning, everything went right in the regular season last year, including the health. But the one thing, like Jackson mentioned, the Cavs' best punch worked all year, right? What was their best punch? They were the best three-point shooting team in basketball. They were just blitzing teams offensively. Entering this year, and I'll just recap for anyone again. This is the summer recap episode. So as of right now, Max Strus recently had surgery on his foot. He's going to miss the first few months of the season. Darius Garland, his timeline is a little uncertain still, but it sounds like he won't be back until November or possibly December. So the Cavs are going to be down 2 starters entering this season. Not only that, though, they also lost Ty Jerome. So they've lost 3 of their best three-point shooters from last year entering this season. Having to adjust and enter this year with your best punch being a little hindered is going to be a big test for them. And I think we're going to learn a lot because I don't expect them to go 15-0 again. Again, losing your 3 best shooters is going to be a huge hit to their three-point shooting, which was their best punch last year. And I think that should naturally lead to Evan Mobley having to carry a little more on his plate than he did last year. If you can't bombard teams from 3, then you're going to have to beat them up in the paint. So, while the Cavs, I don't think they're going to start the year guns blazing or anything like that. I do hope that this will allow Mobley to hit the ground running and start his all-NBA agenda early because right now, we're looking at a situation where Evan Mobley last year, Evan Mobley overall is a one-time All-Star, one-time All-NBA player. If he continues to prove that he's just going to be an All-NBA player every year that he's healthy for the next 10 years, then the Cavs are in a great position. But if what we find out this year in the regular season is that, well, the Cavs won 64 games last year and Mobley played good, so that's why he got on an All-NBA team, but he's not really a top 10 to 15 player legit, it's going to look a little worse, right? And so that's what I mentioned earlier. We say the regular season doesn't matter, but if Evan Mobley looks more like a fringe all-star player this year for whatever reason, I don't think that's going to happen, just to be clear. But what I'm trying to say is if Evan Mobley comes out and it's, again, hands down, he's a top 10 to 15 player, he's on an All-NBA team, you're going to feel better about the Cavs than if last year was just a little fluky, which as of right now, the Cavs, they kind of have to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, and they can only really prove that by succeeding in the playoffs. But a little regular season success doesn't hurt, and the start of the year is going to allow them to show that they can win in a multitude of ways.
I want to see them rediscover their defensive identity. They were hovering around like the 10th spot for defensive rating for most of last season. You know, that's not where they were under JB Bickerstaff. And a lot of the defensive, like, it wasn't talked about too much just because how good the offense was and how different it was. But the defense was different in how often they switched things compared to the JB Bickerstaff era where they really did their best to not switch things when they could, to go under. And I feel like that type of defense, like the switching defense, was basically put in place to counteract teams like the Boston Celtics, who just prey on mismatches and things like that and slows down their, 3-point shooting. But as we saw against Indiana, it also can backfire on them, and they continually, targeted Ty Jerome, targeted some of the weaker links, and really, I felt like it didn't allow the two big lineups to really be as imposing as when you're constantly just playing drop and really protecting the rim well. So I would like to see some versatility in how they defend. Like, I'm not saying play drop for 82 games, but can you play drop when the situation calls for it? Can you do some different things on the defensive end? Because I think that being able to do that would go a long way in whether or not the Cavs are successful, because the 3-point shot wasn't falling against Indiana, and they did not have the defensive. I feel like they didn't have the defensive reps and the defensive focus to really claw back in on that end. And that's, you look at Oklahoma City, they had some, they're a very different team, but they also rely heavily on the 3-point shot on the offensive end. But there is a lot of different ways that they can play defensively, and play defensively in different ways that allowed them to really match up well against a team like Denver, who was really big inside, and then also a team like Indiana, who is not really big inside and really a perimeter-oriented team. So I would like to see progress on that end.
Yeah, I think that was what was the most concerning defensively too, was that it was never a change of personnel. So it had to have been a scheme thing. The team is capable of a certain level of defense, and I don't necessarily love the argument that if you're playing that efficiently on offense, it means that you're not going to put as much effort in the back end. And I think it's just when you have so much confidence in the system that's been working, it's well, I could probably take a half step on this defensive possession and I'll make up for it on the other end. I think the team fell into that trap. The Pacers were an offensive team that was similar to the Cavs like that, but their players were definitely more bought in, like you said. So the Cavs, I'm not necessarily also clamoring that I want them to be top 5 defensively, but it's just, I want to see, and I think this is what the free agency has kind of told us, is that the Cavs are looking for that buy-in too, because you look at Nance and you look at Ball, 2 taller defenders, more perimeter oriented defenders. Dean Wade, hypothetically, as we've said, great when he's on the floor. So I 100% agree with you that the Cavs, I think that's what I'd be looking for in the regular season, because they definitely took their foot off the gas.
One thing I do think is really important to point out with the defense. I don't want to cut Tony off. Give him a chance to talk. But
get your take off. I didn't have anything to say.
Their style of defense, where they're doing a lot of switching, was really bad when you had Darius Garland playing with 9 toes instead of 10 on defense, and you had Evan Mobley. I know he looked good, but that lateral movement, especially on the defensive end, was really bad. So they didn't have any counters to that. If you remember back to Game 3, they did have one counter, which was going to the 3-2 zone defense, where they had Evan Mobley up top, and that kind of allowed Mobley to move more in a straight line, which was not as much of an issue as moving side to side. Also allowed you to kind of hide Garland a little bit, which really worked out well. But then Indiana came back and said, well, let's just screen Mobley, because he can't get over screens because he has limited mobility right now. So that took that zone defense out, and then you're stuck back to where you're man defense and trying to switch everything. And then it's just falling apart because you just have too many guys out there who are not their best self. So that's a big reason why that really fell apart. But this kind of goes back to it never fell apart in the regular season because the 3-point shot was always going and they didn't need counters. So it's I would like to see more of those counters deployed, so that maybe you have a better chance if you fall into a situation where your guys aren't 100%.
Yeah, and I think that's where, bringing this full circle, the idea of Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance Jr. falls into place, and you understand why the Cavs went that direction. A big part of it was saving a little bit of money, but it also, you could make the argument that it makes sense on paper too, because you do have more defensive versatility with Lonzo and Nance. Both those guys are a little bit more switchable. You're not going to play the Indiana Pacers the same way that you did last year, but if you were in that series again with this personnel, Lonzo Ball can't really be hunted the same way that Ty Jerome was. He's going to get over screens. You don't even necessarily need to switch, but if you have to. He's a 6'6" guard who can guard, scale up a little bit. Larry Nance Jr., I wouldn't say he's like amazing on switches, but he's better than Jarrett Allen. And I think Jarrett Allen, for his position, for his height, is he's good on switches, but when he's defending Halliburton, he's going to get cooked. You know what I mean? Like you have to have counters. And so I know it all sounds kind of backwards because I said that I would rather have Ty Jerome than Lonzo Ball, but there are scenarios where Lonzo Ball makes more sense. The Cavs are betting on those scenarios being more likely to appear in the playoffs. They're also betting that Lonzo Ball himself is going to appear in the playoffs because he hasn't done it yet. Not even necessarily because of injuries. His teams have just sucked, but hopefully he will be healthy. Hopefully Larry Nance Jr. will be healthy, because if it's not, then this bench is going to be relying on a lot of Jalen Tyson, who hasn't been mentioned yet. Just had to name drop him, and Craig Porter Jr. and Tyrese Proctor, who knows? Maybe he'll recreate that. How many did he have in Summer League? Did he get 40 or was it 37? He had a big game in Summer League.
I thought he got 39.
Maybe it was 39. I don't think he. It
was like 30 shots, but we're not going to talk about that.
You don't want to look at the Summer League too while we're here?
It sucks. All right, that really. Segment was cool.
Omir take. All right. Yeah, I think that's it for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. We're going to have more in-depth previews for different positional groups and different burning questions. We'll be doing a mailbag episode as well at some point before the preseason starts or sometime during preseason. But like I said, it's been a while since we got together to record. So this was a lot of fun, guys. We're going to have more videos coming soon. So make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment. If you think any of our takes were dumb, please let us know. And with all that being said, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs.